It's Jim Stevens from Eureka Canada, and I'm now going to do the assembly, the setup of our very popular series, ElCapitans, which are extremely popular from the canoe tripping crowd through to scouts, to school groups, to outfitters. Wonderful tents coming in 3 sizes, just showing you the differences in the finished pack size, so your 2, your 3, and your 4. We also have available packaged footprints. I'm going to use those for the setup as well. You don't have to use these. We just recommend some kind of ground cover underneath your tent just to protect the floor over the many years of use. Just ensuring that the footprint is smaller than the actual tent so it doesn't trap any rain. Just be aware that if you get some that say Scenic Pass 2, 3, or 4 in your footprint, it fits the same tent. So the Scenic Passes, ElCapitans use the identical footprint. So I've got set up behind me the ElCapitan 4 with the fly sheet on, the ElCapitan 2 with no fly sheet, and I'm now going to go through the steps of setting up the ElCapitan 3. The process for all of them is identical. What I will do though, and as I mentioned at the beginning, I do have the footprints. I am going to use the footprint as part of the setup. Again, you don't have to. You can use a sheet of plastic, old tarp, whatever you want to use, but we do recommend you use something for the life of the tent. The ElCapitan series, these are really and truly outfitter quality, from the fabrics used, from the coatings used, the zippers used, which we'll go into, and can be used 4 season below tree line. What that means is that the aluminum frame, any mesh panels on the inner tent can all be sealed off to stop any cold penetrating winds come, and they do have full coverage fly sheets. So now I'll just start into the setup. So let's find your site, a nice location, free of objects, that has if in the event of a heavy rain, would drain properly, not pool. And I'm just going to spread out my ground sheet in that position. This is on my yard, so it better not have any sharp protruding object. As I suggest with all of our tents, take them home, set them up in your yard. It ensures that all the components are there, and also that you understand the setup before you head out on your camping or canoe or kayak or whatever trip you're going on. What you're going to have when you open up the package, you'll have a set of poles. In the case of the ElCapitan, you'll have 3, of which one will be a shorter pole, and it won't have the pin ends. It'll have just a dome head, and that's going to be for the fly. We'll set that up momentarily. You'll have your fly sheet, and then you'll have a stake bag and the inner tent. Within the stake bag, if you're looking for the printed instructions, you'll find them in there, along with the guy lines, which we'll talk towards the end, the full complement of stakes, and with most of our Eureka tents here in Canada, we include a little tube of sealant, which I can touch base with later. As I've talked with all our tents, when you're building the frames, you want to make sure, be it fiberglass or aluminum, these are aluminum frames, that the inserts, the ferrule inserts, are complete. It's so important. If they are halfway through, a quarter way through, when they get flexed and under pressure, you've got a weak spot built into the design which could break on you. Make sure the connections are complete when you build all your poles. I'm just going to spread the tent body on top of the footprint in the spot that I've suggested. What you're looking for are the doors. The doors will be on what will be the long sides of the tent, so I'm just going to match them up with the long side of the footprint. And I'm going to take one of the built poles for the main frame. These are the 2 longer poles. Insert it into the grommet in the corner. Follow up the seam, attaching the first couple clips to the frame. Repeat the process on the opposite. The back end here. Into the grommet, the corner. Follow the seam, attaching the first couple clips. Then I'll go to the corner of the uppermost pole. So the poles are now crossing over, and the pole going from that corner over to here is the one riding on top. So I'll go there. I'll push the pole to keep the tension. Start to form my hoop. Insert the grommet, and again follow up, do the first couple clips. Now to go to the next corner, I'll walk around. I'll just keep the hand on the pole that's built. Grab the other remaining pole, again pushing, going down to the corner, flexing the pole into position, grommet, clip, clip. And at this point, and it depends on the model and how tall you might be, the doors are open from the when we pack the tent up. I can step inside. You now have at the peak of the tent a toggle and loop, and that just reaches up and crosses over where the poles intersect at the peak of the tent. Like so. Get that position, and then make the final clip attachments on all poles. Now you can, because this isn't all clip design, you can actually go ahead and stake out the tent before you've even attached the frame. So just stretch out the floor, go to the four corners where the grommets are, and stake out accordingly. Now, I've done it this way, but that's an option that you can do. So now I will go and grab some stakes and stake the tent into place. I've got the 4 stakes, and what I'm going to do is angle those in through the loop provided, and at a 45 to 60 degree angle, whatever angle and the ground allows me to work with. And then what I'm also going to do is I've got the corner grommet and web from the footprint, and if I'm using it in conjunction, I will now take the grommet and pop it onto the end of the pole tip as well. And then I'm going to repeat that process in all 4 corners. Well, I've now got the ElCapitan fly sheet, in the case this is 3-person, upside down laying in front of me, and what I've looked for are the 2 pole pockets on the just above the vestibules at each door, and I'm just going to open the pole pocket, insert one of the pole ends from the fly rod, make your second attachment. Will involve a little bit of a flex to the pole. Don't be afraid to do that. And then your Velcro, make that attachment. The diameter of the aluminum poles for the fly rod are 1 size larger than for the mainframe poles. And the reason being, we found out during testing that when we put them on and would stake out the vestibules, if you use the same diameter frame, it caused the vestibules to collapse. So this pole is a thicker diameter than the mainframe pole. So it's not a mistake when you receive your tent. That is intended. I've made the pole attachment. There's really no front or back to these tents. It's symmetrical. Either end is the same. So I'm just lifting it up and you'll notice when I do lift by the frame, I'll grab it at the end, but I also grab it up here. Don't put all the pressure on one spot, so I'm spreading it over just to be safe. Positioning it, center it over the tent. Take the fabric. And then spread it out so that I can now go to the next step. What you're going to have are these guideline locations. So you want to locate those. On the underside is Velcro. That gets attached around the frame. So now what I need to do is just kind of measure. I'm clipping it here. I want to just make sure that I got it. And in this case, it's above the second clip. Make my Velcro attachment, and I'll do that on all 4 poles. I've made the 4 Velcro attachments that I just was mentioning. And now I'm going to go to the final lower attachments. What you've got on either side is a web with a nylon clip that attaches to a ring on the side of the inner tent. And then what we're going to do is make that attachment, and then when we go and do the final staking, that'll pull out, creating a gap between the fly and the sidewall, but also straightening the wall, maximizing your internal space. So I'll do that on both sides. I'm also going to go to all 4 corners where you've got your quick release buckles. Just make the attachments down in the corner. For the adjustment, I pull down on the top of the web at where it joins at the tent on the fly, and just tighten that up. So, and then I'll repeat on the other side. I've staked out the entire tent, excluding the guy lines. So I pulled out the 2 side extensions, which I mentioned earlier, and then there's it's a 2-point vestibule off the front, which you can see here, and the same process on the back. Different features that I can show you with the vestibule. As with all Eureka tents, we add fabric rain cover over the zipper. That's on purpose, and where the seam is, it's also tape, and that's consistent to all of our tents. Front and back, you'll have a prop-supported capped vent, so it's going to create that chimney effect to some degree, which is what we're after, and that airflow can come under the fly. But you also have these 2 short zippers here, and Often, what are they for? Some people love them because they travel with their dogs. The dog thinks they're inside the tent and they'll pop their head out here and they're kind of a doggy door. But in truth, what it is you have located on the inside a loop system that works with these little toggles. So, yeah. Probably easier doing it from inside the vestibule, but nonetheless, there's the toggle. There we go. They get affixed to another little loop positioned at this location here. And again, same on the other side. What you end up with is a little short, low position panel. This is wonderful for a chimney effect. So if you're out and you have to have the full fly and vestibule in position because it's raining, but it's warm, this will allow airflow, and you've got the same at the back end, coming in low, cold air being heavier and down low, coming in, pushing the warm air, creating a circulation pattern within the vestibule and the tent, depending which panels you got on the inner tent opened up. So that's what that's used for, but as we've also mentioned, some dogs do tend to love it, and folks the same. The cap vent, and then what I'll also point out on the zipper of the vestibules, like many of the tents, these are number 10s. When I talk about outfitter quality, this is the biggest zipper on the market that they would use in a tent design. We use that on the vestibule, and then again we use it on the main zippers of the inner tent doors. So very beefy zippers. We've done that. This is a tent, as I mentioned at the beginning, often used by school groups, scout troops, outfitting companies, and when we talk to them over the use of the tents, 100 nights, 200 nights, oftentimes the zipper is the first failure, and whether it's our tent or a competitor's brand, that's usually what goes first. So we beefed them up going to a number 10. So, but not just for outfitters for that purpose, it's for you as well. Just really well done. The fly uses the best fabrics that we offer in our program, to 75 denier polyester with a minimum test result post-production of 2,000 millimeter coating, which is more than adequate. A 1,000 coated fly with a proper pitch is actually pretty good. The floor is a 5,000 millimeter post-production test result, so excellent, excellent coating. We've done that again for the outfitting purposes. These tents, some folks will use 50, 60 nights a season. And if that's you, then this is a tent you should seriously take a look at. It just means it's going to last you longer over a tent with, say, half the coating levels. The guy lines with a little reflective, so if you're coming back to your tent at night, you will pick that up. It'll reflect back. In heavy wind conditions, the guy lines are included. You want to use those to stake out, and it just adds tremendous stability to the tent. L-caps are low profile to begin with, so wind isn't such an effect on the tent, but you still need the guy lines. Notice the positioning is in the correct spot, so when the pole does collapse, that's the key spot right there. If it's too high, the tent collapses here, it makes no use at all. So it's been strategically located. And next I'll walk you through the other two sides. I'm sitting inside the two-person tent. Obviously the fly sheet's not on, but all the features from the 3 and the 4 apply to the two-person as well. We've talked about the fabric, it's got the heavy coatings and aluminum frame. The panels on the doors have both the full mesh window panel and then the breathable panel in behind, depending on the temperature. Obviously warm, you open up the breathable. Cold, you close it off. That's what makes these actual 4-season below tree line tents. The other panels that you can open up and control are in the top of the tent on the inside, and these are full triangular panels, and I can actually feel the cool airflow immediately as I open that up. I've got one here and then one behind me, so the whole upper portion of the tent could become mesh as well, and I would be using this on the warmer summer nights, such as a day like today. But it does allow me, should I be camping out in November and I'm in temperatures down in the freezing range, I can just camp in this well, have those closed off, and trap more of the warm heat inside the tent. The only difference structurally from the 2 to the 3 and 4, the 3 and 4 will have the doors of the tent kind of diagonally opposite, so a door here and a door back here. whereas on the two-person, we anticipate that both people are going to have their heads at the same end, so we've got the doors right beside their heads. So the doors are at the same end of the tent for the two, and the 3s and 4s diagonally opposite. It does mean when you put the fly sheet onto your two-person tent, there is a right and a wrong way. You want to line up your zipper opening so that it will open as such to access into the tent. If you do it wrong, it still works, but there is a right and wrong way to it. Now with the 4-person, and trying to give you a bit of a scale, so this measures, an imperial measure, it's going to be 8'6" across the front, 7'6" door to door, with the full coverage fly and vestibules. The beauty of full coverage flies with any tent does allow you to maximize the interior space. You can be up against the walls, you don't have to worry about it. What I'm going to show you, this is the typical entrance to the vestibule. You can crawl in, and depending on the conditions, if you have to, you can close up the zippers of the vestibule, peel off wet clothing. If weather's nice, you can decide to pop a stake and now roll it to this position and tie off. Or if it's absolutely gorgeous weather, you can roll the vestibule totally out of the way. And this again is possible both sides of the tent, front and back. So gorgeous wide open doors. One thing you'll notice on a lot of the tents, we use a black mesh, and this came about on a trip of mine, a canoe trip when I was inside a tent with black mesh. Typically they all use kind of a smoky gray. And I mention this because when you're in it, at low light, it was as if the mesh disappeared, and I actually had to feel to see if the mesh was actually closed. The clarity through the black mesh is actually far better than through the smoky gray mesh, just kind of an FYI. So I'm going to get inside the tent just so you can kind of relate to the size. I was just inside the 2. So I'm not a tall man, but with 7'6" going door to door, there's room for 4 adults in here. Now it's up to you if you want to do 4 or you want to do 2. That's every person's choice, but there's definite room knowing you maximize the full interior space of the tent. We're going to try something here that wasn't really part of the design plan, but it may work, and if this video makes it to the website, then you'll know it did. What I'm going to do is pretend that it's pouring rain, and I'm going to crawl inside the vestibule and take down the inner tent and pack it up, and then pop it outside so you can see that I've been able to do it without having it exposed to the elements. And that comes in handy if you're on some canoe trips or whatever kind of trip it might be, and it allows the inner tent to remain perfectly dry. So here I go, and wish I had the sound effects for it pouring rain, but I don't, but do your best. We're crawling inside, peeling it all off as far as closing the vestibule and rain gear, just opening the inner tent door, but I'm not necessarily going inside. What I'm doing, you probably can see a little bit of action happening. I'm popping the clips of the fly to frame, but what I am leaving intact at the moment is the Velcro where the guy lines would be. So far so good. So this side, all the clips are down. Toggle and loop. Working on the back right corner, again not touching the Velcro. From the fly to the tent. Okay, so clips are almost down. I've taken all the clips, in a pouring rain. I've taken all the clips of the inner tent and the toggle loop system that was at the center point, dropped it, but I've not touched the Velcro locations on the fly to the frame. That's helping give support. I have to disconnect the 2 toggle outs on the side, so the clip and ring that was on the sides of the tent, make those disconnections. Now the part that I'm just not 100% sure on was to go to the corner, and I have to pop the pole out of the grommets of both the footprint and the inner tent, and then what I'm going to do now is put the post back in to the grommet of the footprint. And then I want to repeat that on all 4 corners. It's a trickier process, a little bit finicky, I suppose, but if it saves me from, in the end, getting soaked, so be it. I'm also going to disconnect the quick release buckles and pull the stake. That's freeing up the inner tent. So far, I'm keeping dry, and so far, the fly sheet's up. Repeat the process in the 2 remaining corners. And it worked. So the fly's still up, rain's coming down on me, and I'm able to pack up the inner tent as best I wish. I'd probably do a nice roll, stuff it in the bag, keep it separate from the rest of the tent, which will be packed away wet.